You ready to use your muscles? Behind me, 2007 Chevy Tahoe. We're gonna be replacing the upper ball joint, lower ball joint, and we'll throw in a tie rod for good measure. Let's get started. Jack the vehicle up, put it on jack stands, we'll pull the tire off. Now having an impact is not necessary, but it's sure gonna make your life a whole lot easier. Take off our axle nut. That's a 36 millimeter. That little washer off. We wanna make sure that our axle slides freely in our wheel hub. This one does, sweet. Now if you don't have an impact, to get this nut off, you can put a screwdriver in the fins of our brake rotor. And then as you go to brake it, this will just lock it in place so our hub doesn't spin. Next we have our tie rod. We're just gonna break this jam nut. It is a 24 millimeter. There we go. And our stud nut is a 21 millimeter. Now having a pickle fork will come in handy pulling this off. It goes right in here, we'll tap on it. I'm gonna move our tires so we have better access. All right, pickle fork. Now if you don't have a pickle fork, you can hit on the knuckle. That vibration will break it loose. Because we're replacing it, you can even hit on the stud here. That's up to you. Pickle fork goes in. There we go. Ugh, gooey gooey. I'll pull this off. It might not wanna come off very easy. We have a 16 millimeter back here. That'll hold our inner tie rod. Then we take another wrench and just put it on our stud. That'll give us some leverage. There we go. We'll just slowly pull this off. There we go. We're gonna go ahead and put in our new one right away. A little bit of anti-seize, doesn't take a lot, just a little. Thread on our new one. Now we didn't move the jam nut, so it'll just bottom out to the jam nut. We're getting in alignment anyway. We can put in our Zerk fitting, snug that down. Perfect, we'll grease it later. We're done here. Wipe off all this splooge on our steering knuckle. Now our upper ball joint nut, we're just gonna put a little lubricant on it, and we'll do that to the bottom as well. Now our upper ball joint is part of the control arm, so we'll get this because our control arm will be coming off. And we'll do that to the other side as well. All right. Without our tie rod connected, we can turn the wheel by hand, and we'll get to our brake. We'll take a screwdriver, put it in between, we'll pull on our rotor. That'll give us some slack for when we put the caliper back on. This is just sucking in our caliper piston. There we go, give us a little slack, okay. Now we have a little S-hook. That'll suspend our caliper once we get it off. Those are 18 millimeter. Now on your rotor, you may or may not still have the hold down screw. That is a T30 Torx. Hopefully it comes right off. Easy breezy. Now this is just on for assembly, so you don't have to reinstall it. That's up to you. This came off so easy, I'll just put it right back on. Rotor comes off. Let's pull off our ball joints. Before we get too far, we want to get our wheel speed sensor wiring out of the way. We can disconnect it from up here, and this should pop out of its little hole. I'm gonna get a screwdriver, pop it up. Having a pair of pliers like this can help. Then we can pop it out of this holder, just like that, okay. It can just dangle here, no big deal. Now we have our upper ball joint is an 18 millimeter, if it's still factory. Shouldn't be on there too tight. Torque is pretty low on that. Now I have a ratcheting wrench just to make it go faster. We got some more pickle fork action up top. There we go. Move it back. So now we can start to push our CV axle out. There we go. Okay, I'll set this aside for now. Now that it's out and free, we're gonna pull off our lower ball joint and get our knuckle off. Got 24 millimeter on mine. I'll get it again with a pickle fork. I'm gonna hold on to it because it'll want to drop once it pops. I popped you with the hammer. Let me back you up out of the danger zone. There we go. Perfect. Now we'll just set this aside. Then we'll lift this up and set it right there. Perfectly out of the way. Now this ball joint is original. That's pretty impressive. Let me show you. So the factory ball joints are stamped in. So once they pressed it up, they have a machine that stamps it in as a key. So we can go ahead and just get all this dirt and crust away. We're gonna have to unstamp it, which is pretty easy to do. I did the other side already first and it was replaced before. So if it's been replaced before, it'll just have a snap ring that you unsnap, and that's all you gotta do. But if yours is original, like this, then we'll unstamp it. So you can use a chisel. that works well. I have this little weird punch thing that I've modified. Doesn't matter. Not sure if you can see it. Let me really clean this up so you can see it the best. And just with the chisel, get something a little more substantial. Okay. Move you around. Move the CV axle. I know it's in your way. Okay, I think that's good. Now let's drive it out. And hopefully there are not too many shadows in your way. We'll get the new one, pull off our boot, and we're gonna want a receiver that's bigger than the ball joint. Get this one. So this is better. So it's bigger, but not crazy bigger. So that'll go on our bottom, along with this. So it has the big hole that goes on the bottom, just like that. And then the top is just gonna be our rod. All right, just like that. If you're not replacing your upper control arm, this is how you would do it. But we are replacing our upper control arm to replace our ball joint. So in that case, we're not gonna press out our lower yet. We're gonna take off our upper. That'll clear out all this space up here and make it easier. So let's do that first. So for our upper control arm, these are cam bolts. So the control arm can be pushed out or in depending on what the alignment needs. On this one, it still has this cap. That's perfect. It kind of locks it in place. So when we take it off, we put it back on. It can only go on in the place that it's in. There's a little key on it. If yours does not have this, what we want to do is just mark it. There's a little dowel on the frame. So we'll mark the dowel and then mark our cam and just make a little mark where they meet together. We'll do that on this side. We'll do that on the inside, because there's one over there too, and we'll line both of them up. And then we'll go to the other side and do the exact same thing. Once you have it marked, we can go ahead and bust it loose, 21 millimeter. All right, let me reposition. And there's no room to get an impact on it. That would be the best, but. I think it's starting to get easier. Now any of this, if you're in a rust belt, having some kind of torch, oxygen, acetylene, heating all these bolts up would be beneficial. And we don't have to worry about that too much here. Sometimes I use a torch. Nice. It's working them muscles. Then when we take off our little cam, just tap on it. This thing is putting up a fight. There we go. So when we set this down, we just want to make sure that this one goes on this side and not on the other side. So we'll set it down just under here below it so we know where it went. You can knock on this with a hammer. There we go. It's good enough here for now. Let's hop over to the other side. Over here we got 10 mil for our brake bracket. Pop this up and out. All right, same thing. Just do our best. This side's not as bad. Perfect. Tap on it. Just gonna use a little pry bar to get in here. Pop on it. Pop this off. Perfect. Okay, so let me show you. And we have to get these through bolts out, but because of these wings, so we have to turn the wings around so the fat part of the wing is facing in that direction. But it's still not quite enough. Our strut gets in the way, our springs. Now, if you're able to get it out without removing what I'm about to show you, great, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, what we'll have to do is come down here and remove that lower strut bolt, and then there's one just on the other side right there, that lower strut bolt. Those two come out, and our strut, the bottom can swing out. That'll give us a little more room for those. Otherwise, at least on this vehicle, there's not enough room because of our springs. So these lower strut bolts are 15 millimeter. Put this back up here. Hopefully that's not in your way now. We'll take a pry bar underneath. We'll push down on the control arm. And then we'll bring this strut forward. It doesn't have to come very far. There we go. Just enough. Then we can move it and manipulate it a little. And let's get a visual on the upper bolts. So I'm going to take a 7/8 and just turn this so I can get that cam out of the way. And now it should slide through. Give us a little help. And you can push the control arm back because that's slotted. We still need it to come out a little further. Hit on this a little more. Just using a little punch. Trying to anyway. Glad this side's giving me a little trouble so you can see it. The other side was nice and buttery. I'm gonna pull forward on the strut just a little more. Use a pry bar back here. Okay, so this side is really close, so I'm gonna bring it around to the other side. And maybe if we get the other side off, this side will pop off easier. It's just hanging up on something. Same thing, let me just turn this. Okay, then I'll use a punch. There we go, that came out all the way. Perfect. Maybe if I can wiggle the control arm, it'll want to come out. Angle you again. And back over here, I'm just going to feed the punch through. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, not too bad. A little hard. So now, these should come out. They should just pull right out. Ah, nice. Now back to the lower ball joint. All right, we already know what we need. A receiving cup, a cap for the cup. That goes on. And this goes like that. There we go, nice. Now we have all this room up here with nothing in our way. And we just tighten her down. And you can put a little lubricant on the threads too. That would be helpful. This already has a bunch of lubricant on it. Let me set you back just a little. You're just in my arm's way. There we go. I just heard it pop. Ah, nice, it's going through. I'm gonna hit it with the impact and just knock it the rest of the way. Okay, that's it. Ball joint's in the cup. There she is. We're gonna take a little bit of dielectric grease, silicone paste as a lubricant, put on the inside. All right, this is important, whether your control arm is aluminum or steel. It makes a difference to what ball joint goes inside here. Let me show you an example. This flat top is for a steel control arm, and then this coned top is for an aluminum control arm. You'll also notice a difference in height between where our snap ring goes on either one. The aluminum control arm is a little taller from this lip to the snap ring. So if you get the wrong one, you'll bolt it in. The diameter is the same, so it'll press in nice, but the snap ring groove will not protrude enough to get a snap ring in it. Steel, aluminum. The control arm we're working with here is aluminum. Other than that, everything I believe is the same. Now we'll press in our new one. We've got a little paste here we could put on just as a lubricant. There we go. So now we want a piece that fits over here, and that's gonna fit right over the top just like that. Then we have a cap. This is the cap to take it off. Nice big hole. This one's a little tiny hole. We're gonna put that on. Now our ball joint, our fitting, we wanna make sure our orientation isn't facing the wheel. We wanna be able to grease that so we can face it forward, maybe a little angled. So when we get our oil changed or next time we wanna grease it, it's nice and accessible. Put that in. Okay, and we'll hold it. Now we can just use the open bottom end. Go on the bottom. Let me take this out a little more. Open bottom end. There we go. Okay, we'll center this top again. Center the bottom. All right. Make sure it's going in as straight as possible. So now I'm not going to use an impact putting it back on. Let me tighten it down. Let me back you up again. Whew, it takes a lot of muscles. Looks like we're still going in relatively straight. So the longer your breaker bar, the better. So I just went and got a longer one out of the van. So all my muscles. Okay, we are bottomed out. I'll go a little tighter just to see. Nope, I think that's it. So now we loosen it up. hit that with the impact, finish it off. All right, done with our ball joint press. Now we can put on our grease fitting. Mine's a little 8mm, yours might be different. I'm gonna fill it up with grease now before I put the boot on so I can see it come out the bottom. Okay, and then I'll turn it, and I'll turn it, turn it. There we go. Okay, that's it. I'll wipe this off. Now I'll put the boot on. The cup that comes with it is for installing it. Put the boot and then this. There we go. All right, last thing to do for our lower ball joint is our cotter pin here. That keyhole we want to turn, so when we get the knuckle on, tighten up our nut, then our cotter pin goes sideways, so in the future it's easy to come off. For that, we'll put the nut on, and then we'll tighten the nut up, and then that will spin the whole thing. Yeah, that's pretty good. Take that back off. All right, one more thing. We have our C-clamp, we'll spread that. Okay, I think just hitting it on the top, make sure it's in all the way. And then if it can move around, there we go. I'm gonna move it all the way so it's on this side. That way in the future when it gets grimy and rusty, we'll have a good spot to hit on it to break it free. Hopefully we won't be back here for another 10 years. All right, lower ball joint is complete. Let's put on our upper control arm. All right, new control arm. I'm gonna put on our grease fitting first. That way I don't get any dust or anything fall into it. All right, now we'll feed it in. Might be a tight fit. That's okay, it will fit. There we go. And we can tap it. Let's get our through bolts. Put this one in first. There we go. All right, perfect. We'll put the nut on. I'll lubricate this a little and put the nut on just to hold it in place. Now we can do the other side. Tap on it a little. Oh, there we go. Got it. Feed it through a little more. Got it all the way. So it's just getting it around this spring was the issue. You know, when I took it off, I took this side off first, then this side came off a little easier. So I wonder if going on, I should have put this side on first, then this one second. Ooh, well, we got it. A little lubricant. Okay, now I can put this on. And turn this so it locks in. Okay, just like that. Put the nut back on. Then I'll pull this nut off, put this little key on. And same thing, turn the bolt until it lines up. All right, that's it. Put the nut back on. We're just gonna snug it. We're gonna torque it later. Okay, just snug. In order to torque these, we want to load the suspension. So when everything's back together, we'll put a jack under the lower control arm, jack it up, and that'll load it as if the tire was on the ground. Then we'll torque these. So we're done here for now. Next, we'll put our strut back on. We'll just need a little pry bar and we'll fiddle with that. We'll just do the lower control arm, push this back. And we'll move this just a little, line it back up with its holes. I'm gonna put one through the top. There's no good way to pry on it. I can just tap a little. There we go. So I got one through the top, then the other one I'll feed through the bottom just to get it started. Perfect. Suck it down some. Then we'll pop this back out. And if this came off, no big deal. It just rests in there. Then we'll come through the bottom. We'll snug these down. And we'll go ahead and torque, 37 foot-pounds. Now we can throw our knuckle back on. So we're gonna put it in the bottom first. Let me get my nut ready to go. Okay, and then we'll put the nut on, a few threads. Perfect. Now we can put our CV axle in. On our CV axle, just the splines, we're gonna put a little anti-seize. Doesn't take a lot. We just wanna coat the splines all the way around. We don't wanna get it on our threads, just the splines. Those will come out easier in the future. Keep it from seizing in there. All right, we'll line up our splines. Perfect. I'm gonna lift up, get a little more threads, tighten on my lower ball joint. Now we'll do our upper. Pull this off. Now just like the lower, our cotter pin hole is in the wrong spot. So we're just gonna tighten this up. We're gonna move that around. Okay, right about there. And we'll feed this through. We'll just, with a pry bar, pry down here. There we go. Throw that castle nut on. Snug her down. All right. And we can tighten this and throw in the cotter pin. 37 foot-pounds, which isn't that much. You can get a crow's foot if you want an exact torque, or just aim for 37 in your mind. And then we'll throw that cotter pin on. There we go. We can also tighten up our lower ball joint. That's 81 foot-pounds. And we'll put in our cotter pin. Now, if it doesn't quite line up, just go to the next castle slot. Don't back it off, just go forward. Okay, that's finished. Put our axle nut on. Turn this, put our rotor on. And our mounting bolt came off pretty easy, so I'm just gonna put it back on. Put a little anti-seize on it if you like, or just leave it off if you like. That's up to you. As far as torque, just torque enough till it starts spinning. Get a little tap. That's pretty much it. Doesn't take much. We'll put our caliper on. Some of my brake pads fell out. Put those back on. It should slide on pretty easily. So I'm just gonna feed one bolt in there, just to hold it in place. Let me move you to the other side. We want a little bit of thread locker on our caliper bracket bolts. Suck those down. And these are a whopping 148 foot-pounds. While we're over here, we have our brake bracket. We can go on that little 10 mil. And we'll torque this to GNS, good and snug. Now we have our wheel speed sensor. Route that back around, plug it in, double check. I think the last thing is our tie rod, and then we'll load the suspension. Tie rod just goes in. Now we'll do the same thing with the tie rod. If this cotter pin hole isn't aimed in the right direction, we'll just aim it. So now with the jack underneath, we're gonna jack up the lower control arm. Just enough so it comes off of our jack stand. Now we can go ahead and torque our upper control arm, 140 foot-pounds. Last thing to torque is our spindle nut, 177 foot-pounds. Again, we can put a screwdriver in the fins, and while we're torquing it down, that'll hold our hub in place for us. Double check everything. When we are complete, we're gonna go ahead and put our tire on, then take it for a good spin. All right, that is it. Take it for a good test drive. Make sure you don't hear any clunks, new squeaks, or anything crazy, and you're good to go. Any comments, post down below. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. See you on the next one.